Welcome to the Global Events Podcast. You know, every nation's identity is really woven from the threads of its past, isn't it? Today, we're looking into a really fascinating situation unfolding in Indonesia. It seems the very narrative of their history is, well, not just being revisited, but actively rewritten. We've got some interesting sources to help us understand this. What's our main goal here today?
Yeah, it's a big one. Our mission really is to unpack this incredibly ambitious new history project from the Indonesian government. What it actually involves, why now, and all the different takes on it, from the official aim to some pretty serious concerns from academics, activists.
Right.
We need to look at the sheer scale of it and sort of what it means for how Indonesia sees itself.
Okay, let's start with that scale then, because it sounds massive. Can you give us the quick facts on this? What makes it so ambitious?
Absolutely. So we're talking about the government putting aside over $500 million.
Wow, 500 million.
Yeah, it's a huge sum. And it's dedicated to creating 10 volumes of the nation's history. These books are meant to cover, well, everything, ancient times, right up to 2024. And the plan, the really ambitious part, is to have them ready by August.
This August.
This August,
Yeah.
just in time for Indonesia's 80th anniversary of independence.
Okay.
They're framing it as a, quote, gift to the Indonesian public. But what's really interesting is the project's concept paper. It states the purpose is to boost nationalism and love for Indonesia. But, and this is the key phrase, without being nationalistic.
Without being nationalistic. That sounds like a very fine line to walk. What does that phrase tell us about the challenge they're facing here? Trying to build unity, but maybe avoid, propaganda.
Exactly. It suggests they're aware of the potential pitfalls, the historical baggage. On one hand, yes, foster pride, unity. But on the other, they seem to know that politicizing history can backfire, can divide. So the challenge is huge. How do you inspire that national feeling without smoothing over or even erasing the difficult parts? It's really an attempt to navigate between celebration and critical reflection. It's a tension we see everywhere, really.
A fascinating tightrope walk indeed. But like you said, a project this big, touching national history, well, it's bound to get a lot of scrutiny. What are the main worries people are voicing, especially about the sensitive bits of Indonesia's past? How might they be handled or maybe ignored?
Right. This is where the serious concerns come in. And it boils down to that fundamental question.
Yeah.
Who gets to write the history? And how? Critics, and we're talking respected historians, human rights activists, they're worried. They talk about a potential normalization of violence in politics, maybe framed as necessary for development.
Normalization of violence.
Yeah. They're specifically concerned about how events from the late 90s might be portrayed, the mass riots, the ethnic violence, serious human rights violations. Then there's the whole occupation of East Timor. That'll last over 20 years. Very brutal.
And the current president?
And yes, the allegations against President Prabowo Subianto concerning rights abuses from his military days, allegations he's consistently denied, of course. There's actually a petition going around now.
Really?
Yeah, arguing history shouldn't be used to, quote, cover the sins of the past. Some people genuinely fear this signals a kind of creeping authoritarianism making a comeback.
Wow, so the contrast is pretty stark. A gift versus feels of covering sins and creeping authoritarianism. Is there any viewpoint where this could be seen positively for national unity? Or are the critics just seeing too many red flags?
Well, from the critics' perspective, the concerns definitely seem to outweigh potential upsides. Their main worry is that in trying to create unity, the project might end up sanitizing the past, whitewashing it. And that, they argue, actually undermines real reconciliation and accountability. They'd say true unity comes from facing the difficult stuff head-on, not sidestepping it.
So the intention might be good, but the method.
The method could be counterproductive, exactly. That's the fear.
Okay, so with all these serious concerns floating around, how are the people actually writing the books, the editors, the historians, how are they responding? Are they just saying, trust us, we're using facts, is that enough?
Well, one of the lead editors has spoken out pretty strongly, defending the project. They insist they're committed to using facts, only facts. And they emphasize they haven't received any direct orders from the government, no political meddling. They're saying, basically, we're the ones making the calls here, discussing the content, the revisions.
So academic independence is the claim.
That's the claim. They've urged people not to judge before the books are even out. And they are pointing to a plan for July. They intend to do a public review, travel around the country, share the work, get feedback. They're presenting this as proof of their willingness to listen, suggesting it's a genuinely open process.
Okay. A public review could be interesting.
It could be. Their whole defense rests on this commitment to facts and public engagement, pushing back against the idea of political influence.
So we end up with this huge, ambitious project. It aims to celebrate history, build unity, but at the same time, it's facing intense questions about interpretation, about what gets included, what gets left out. It really underscores how history isn't just static, is it? It's alive. It shapes national identity right now.
Absolutely. And if you look at the bigger picture, globally, this whole situation highlights that core tension in any national story. Who owns the past? And how does that ownership, that understanding, then steer a nation's present course and its future? And maybe for you, listening, it brings up a really important question. How would you want your own country's history written? Especially the tough parts, the uncomfortable truths. And maybe just as importantly, who would you trust to write it?